You're about to lose everything." The words hung in the air like a final warning. Izzy Dawson, standing in the sleek, cold office of Lucas Sterling, the billionaire CEO she once loved, felt a strange sense of calm. She had everything she needed: the divorce papers, the truth, and the strength to end it all. Lucas didn't even look up from his desk, his fingers idly scrolling through his phone. A smirk tugged at his lips, as if nothing could touch him. But Izzy wasn't here for pleasantries. She was here to reclaim her life. For the past 5 years, she had supported him, helped build his empire. She had sacrificed her own dreams for his. And now, he was just another man who had taken everything for granted. He wasn't even pretending to care. "You think this is going to change anything?" Lucas said, his voice cold, indifferent. Izzy's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. She had worked too hard for this moment. Too long. She had lived through the loneliness, the whispers behind her back, the late nights when Lucas chose work over her. She had convinced herself that it was worth it, that the love they once had would return. But it never did. He had chosen someone else. And now, as she stood before him, Izzy realized that she wasn't just walking out of this office. She was walking into her future. "No, Lucas," she said, her voice steady, each word carefully chosen. "You've already lost everything." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers for the first time in weeks. His expression faltered, just for a moment. But that was all she needed. It was enough. Izzy stepped forward, dropping the divorce papers on his pristine desk. The finality of it all hit her like a wave. He didn't deserve her. And she would never be the woman who stayed in a relationship that made her feel invisible. She turned to leave, her heels clicking against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the silence of the room. But before she could reach the door, Lucas spoke. "You're making a mistake, Izzy. You don't know what you're walking away from." His words stung, but Izzy didn't flinch. She wasn't walking away from anything. She was walking toward everything she had ever dreamed of. "I know exactly what I'm walking away from," she said without looking back. "And I'm never coming back." The door closed behind her with a soft click, but the weight of her decision lingered in the air. Lucas was left alone, staring at the papers on his desk, the reality of what he had lost slowly sinking in. Izzy stepped out into the crisp evening air, a small smile tugging at her lips. The city skyline stretched out before her, and for the first time in a long while, she felt free. She wasn't going to be the woman who faded into the background. She was going to build her own empire. And nothing, not even Lucas Sterling, could stop her now. Izzy stepped into the cold night, her breath visible in the crisp air. The city's lights flickered like stars, but none of them shone as brightly as the fire inside her. She had just closed the door on a life she thought she wanted, but that life was never truly hers. Lucas had stolen that from her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to take. She walked down the sidewalk, her heels clicking rhythmically against the pavement as the weight of her decision settled in. She wasn't walking away from love, she was walking toward herself. She passed the old cafe they used to visit, the one with the faded red sign, and paused for a moment. She could almost see them sitting there, laughing together over coffee, but that version of them was long gone. She had built her entire world around Lucas, and now she was tearing it all down. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and for a split second, she considered ignoring it. But she knew it was him. The last message was brief, yet enough to stir something deep inside her. "We need to talk." Izzy let out a slow breath and typed back, "I'm done talking." She hit send and locked her phone, tucking it back into her bag. She didn't need to explain herself anymore. The truth was already out there. As she walked through the city, the world around her seemed to fall into place. There was a quiet strength in the way she moved now, a confidence she had never known she possessed. It was like the woman she was meant to be had always been buried deep inside her, waiting for this moment to emerge. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Izzy threw herself into her work, focusing on building her career from the ground up. She had a vision, a plan, and nothing was going to stop her. Each day, she woke up with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. She rented a small office space, hired a few employees, and slowly but surely, her new company began to take shape. She poured her heart into her work, using the pain of the past to fuel her ambition. She worked late into the nights, making calls, reviewing contracts, and securing deals. She was unstoppable. As she climbed higher, she couldn't help but notice the way people looked at her now. The same people who once dismissed her as just Lucas' girlfriend were now looking at her with respect. She had earned it. One afternoon, a few months after the divorce, she found herself at a networking event for female entrepreneurs. It was held in a luxurious hotel, the kind of place she would have never imagined stepping foot in a year ago. She was now one of the most successful women in the room, and it felt surreal. The event was buzzing with excitement as women from all industries gathered to discuss business, share ideas, and inspire each other. Izzy took a deep breath and walked into the main hall. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the faces of the women who had already established themselves as leaders. As she moved through the crowd, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find a familiar face, Tasha, her old friend and former colleague. "Izzy, is that really you?" Tasha asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Izzy smiled. "It's me." Tasha laughed and pulled her into a hug. "I can't believe how much you've changed. I always knew you were destined for greatness." The two women caught up, exchanging stories of their journeys and accomplishments. As the night went on, Izzy found herself speaking on stage, sharing her story with a group of aspiring businesswomen. She spoke about the power of resilience, the importance of believing in yourself, and the strength that comes from within. As the applause rang in her ears, she felt a sense of fulfillment that she had never known before. She was no longer defined by her past, by Lucas, or by anyone else. She had become the woman she was always meant to be. Later that evening, as she stood outside the event, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Izzy," a familiar voice said on the other end. It was Lucas. "We need to talk." She could hear the desperation in his voice, but it didn't move her. "There's nothing to talk about, Lucas," she replied, her voice steady. "I've moved on." She hung up before he could say anything else. For the first time in years, Izzy felt a sense of peace. She had everything she needed to move forward. No more broken promises. No more lies. She was finally free. The city skyline stretched before her, endless and full of possibilities. She was ready for the next chapter, ready to take on the world on her own terms. The days that followed felt like a rebirth for Izzy. She had taken the pieces of her life that Lucas had broken and, piece by piece, rebuilt herself into something stronger. Every morning, she woke up with purpose. No longer weighed down by the past, she embraced the future with open arms. Her business was thriving. She had clients, investors, and respect in a world she had never imagined she could belong to. But it wasn't just about work. It was about her, about reclaiming everything she had lost, and finally, finding her true self. One evening, as the sun set behind the skyline, casting a warm golden glow over the city, Izzy stood in her office, looking out the window. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from Tasha. "Dinner tomorrow night? Big surprise. I think you're going to love this one." Izzy smiled, feeling a sense of excitement she hadn't realized she had been missing. It wasn't long before she arrived at the restaurant Tasha had chosen, a sleek, modern space with dim lighting and a quiet hum of conversation. As soon as she walked in, she saw Tasha waving from a corner booth. Izzy's steps were steady, her heart light. She was no longer the woman who had been broken. She was someone else now. "You're looking amazing, Izzy," Tasha greeted her with a warm hug. "You look like you've found peace." Izzy smiled, sitting down. "I think I have," she replied. Tasha raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "I think it's time to take that peace and make it public." "What do you think?" Izzy's curiosity piqued as she leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Tasha pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. It had the name of a high-profile conference for entrepreneurs, but it wasn't just any conference. It was an exclusive event, one where the biggest names in business came to speak. And there was an open invitation for her to present her story. "It's your time to shine, Izzy. They want to hear from you. They want to know how you did it." Izzy stared at the card for a moment, the weight of the offer sinking in. She had built her business, but speaking in front of an audience like that? It was terrifying, but she knew deep down it was exactly what she needed. The thought of standing in front of those people, sharing her journey, and showing them how far she had come, it was empowering. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady with determination. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Izzy spent countless hours crafting her speech, refining her story, and rehearsing her delivery. She was ready. The night before the event, she sat in her hotel room, looking at herself in the mirror. Her reflection showed a woman who had been through so much: loss, betrayal, pain, but who had also risen stronger than ever before. She was no longer the woman who had clung to a love that didn't serve her. She was the woman who had built an empire on her own terms. The day of the conference, Izzy stood backstage, waiting for her turn. Her heart raced, but there was no fear, only excitement. This was her moment. When the announcer called her name, she walked onto the stage with confidence, feeling the weight of the crowd's gaze, but not flinching. She began her speech, speaking about the trials she had faced and how she had turned those trials into triumph. She spoke of the strength that came from within, the lessons learned through heartache, and the power of never giving up. The room was silent, captivated by her words. She had them in the palm of her hand. By the time she finished, the room erupted in applause. Izzy stood there, soaking it all in, a smile tugging at her lips. She had done it. She had proven to herself and to everyone else that she was capable of achieving anything she set her mind to. As she walked off the stage, Tasha was there waiting for her, her face beaming with pride. "You did it, Izzy. You showed them what you're made of." Izzy nodded, her eyes shining. "I showed them what I'm made of. And I'm just getting started." As the conference continued and the crowd buzzed with excitement, Izzy realized that her journey was far from over. She had opened the door to a new chapter, one where the possibilities were endless. She had found her voice, and she was going to use it to create something bigger than she had ever imagined. The world was hers for the taking, and nothing, not even Lucas or the past, could hold her back anymore. Months passed, and Izzy found herself standing at the edge of a new world, one she had built with nothing but her own strength and determination. Her business was flourishing, but it wasn't just the money that filled her with pride. It was the sense of control, the power she had reclaimed. No longer was she the woman who waited for someone else to validate her worth. She was her own validation. Yet, even as her career soared to new heights, there were moments when her past crept into her thoughts. One such moment came late one evening when she received a call from a number she never expected. It was Lucas. She hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the best of her. "Izzy." His voice came through, softer than she remembered. "Can we talk?" Izzy stood by the window of her office, looking out at the city she had conquered. She had moved on, hadn't she? She had everything she ever wanted, everything she had worked for. But there was a small, lingering part of her that still wondered about him. "What do you want, Lucas?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. There was a long pause on the other end. "I've made a mess of everything," he finally said. "I can't fix it. I know that. But I need to tell you that I regret everything. I was stupid. I was selfish." Izzy closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his words, but not the way she used to. There was no pain in her chest, no longing, just emptiness, as though his words no longer had any power over her. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady, "it's too late for regrets. You can't change what's been done." She paused, then added, "I've moved on. I'm not the woman you left behind anymore. And you don't get to be a part of my life." There was a heavy silence, and for a moment, Izzy almost felt bad. But then she remembered how much she had suffered, how much she had sacrificed, and how much stronger she was now. She had earned this strength. "I understand," Lucas replied, his voice barely a whisper. Izzy felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just the satisfaction of knowing that she was in control. She ended the call without another word. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings and decisions, but Izzy felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She had done what was right for her, and she had no regrets. She was no longer looking back. But the true test came when she was invited to a high-profile charity gala. The event promised to be the most glamorous of the season, attended by the city's elite. Izzy knew it was an opportunity to solidify her place in the business world. But it wasn't just about business. It was about showing the world who she had become. She stood in front of her mirror that night, the evening dress clinging to her body like it was made for her. The sleek, black gown shimmered under the lights, and the diamond necklace she wore sparkled like the future she had built. She no longer looked like the woman who had once begged for love. She looked like a queen. As she arrived at the gala, the room fell silent for a brief moment. People turned to look, not because she was the most beautiful woman in the room, but because she exuded power. Confidence. It wasn't just her dress or her jewelry. It was her presence. She was no longer hiding behind anyone. She was the star of her own story. As the evening went on, Izzy mingled with the guests, smiling and shaking hands, talking about her business ventures and new projects. But it was when she saw Lucas that the room seemed to pause. He was standing across the room, his eyes meeting hers. His gaze was intense, almost desperate, but Izzy felt nothing. The man who had once held her heart was now a distant memory, a shadow of the past. He approached her, a hesitant smile on his face. "Izzy," he began, but she cut him off before he could say anything more. "I don't have time for this, Lucas," she said, her voice cold and controlled. "I'm not the woman who needs your apology anymore. I've moved on, and so should you." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, the weight of her words sinking in. That night, as Izzy left the gala, she realized something. She didn't need validation from anyone. Not Lucas. Not anyone. She had built her empire, her identity, and her future all on her own. And she was finally free. The city lights blurred in her rearview mirror as she drove home, the sound of the tires against the pavement steady and sure. There was no looking back. She was on her way to something bigger, something better. The world was hers now, and nothing was going to stop her. Izzy had become someone entirely new. The events of the past year had shaped her, but they didn't define her. Every decision she made, every move she took, was rooted in the strength she had built. She no longer relied on anyone's approval, not Lucas, not even her own doubts. She had found freedom in herself, and that was more than enough. One evening, as the sky darkened and the city lights flickered to life below her, Izzy sat in her office, the same office she had once dreamed of but had never dared to hope for. The walls, once bare, were now adorned with her accomplishments, photos, awards, and reminders of everything she had built. But even with all of that, there was a growing restlessness in her, a feeling that there was still something more to achieve. Her company had reached new heights, but her heart knew there was another frontier to conquer. She had always been driven by a purpose, and now that purpose was clear. The next step was bigger than business. It was about giving back. Izzy spent the next few weeks traveling, meeting with potential partners, speaking at conferences, and learning about new ways she could use her success to change the world. She connected with other powerful women in business and found herself in a new circle of friends who shared her passion for creating opportunities for others. It was during one of these events that she met Sarah, a young entrepreneur with a vision that matched Izzy's. Sarah had started a nonprofit organization aimed at providing scholarships to underprivileged women who wanted to break into the tech industry. Izzy was drawn to her energy and determination, and the two quickly formed a partnership. They began working together, creating a mentorship program that would give women the resources and opportunities they needed to thrive in a male-dominated field. It was something Izzy had always dreamed of, helping others achieve the kind of success she had found. As the weeks passed, the program gained momentum. Women from all over the country applied for the scholarship and mentorship opportunities, eager to change their lives. Izzy poured her heart into this new venture, seeing the impact it had on the lives of others. Every success story fueled her fire, reminded her why she had worked so hard to get to this point. She was building something that would outlive her, something that would change the world for the better. One evening, after a particularly rewarding day, Izzy sat alone in her office, looking out at the city once again. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She had done it. She had taken the pain, the heartache, and the betrayal, and turned it all into something beautiful. She was no longer the woman who had once feared the future. She was the woman who had built her own. The phone on her desk buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Tasha. "I know you've been busy, but there's someone who wants to meet you. Trust me, you'll want to hear this." Izzy smiled, curious about who could possibly be reaching out now. Tasha was rarely this cryptic. She quickly typed a response. "Who is it?" A few moments later, Tasha's reply came through. "Someone who can take your vision to the next level." Izzy's heart quickened with excitement. She had always been looking for the next challenge, the next opportunity to grow. She didn't know what this meeting would bring, but she was ready for it. The next morning, she arrived at the meeting with Tasha's contact, a powerful venture capitalist named Peter Donovan. Something more. It wasn't the accolades or the money that fulfilled her anymore. It was the feeling of truly making a difference, of seeing the women she had mentored rise above their circumstances and change their lives. That was her real success. As the months passed, Izzy found herself speaking at more events, hosting workshops, and collaborating with other entrepreneurs. She was living a life that many dreamed of, but she still stayed grounded. The memories of her past, of the woman she used to be, kept her humble. One night, after a particularly exhausting week, Izzy decided to take a break and treat herself. She booked a trip to a quiet cabin in the mountains, away from the hustle and bustle of city life. It was a time to reset, to reconnect with herself. As she sat on the porch of the cabin, a cup of hot tea in hand, she thought about Lucas. He had been a part of her life for so long, but now, he was just a distant memory. She had forgiven him, but more importantly, she had forgiven herself. She had let go of the anger, the bitterness, and the regret. She had found peace. A peace she never thought was possible. The next day, Izzy took a long walk through the forest. The crisp air filled her lungs, and the silence of nature surrounded her. She felt free in a way she hadn't in years. The weight of the past had finally been lifted, and she could breathe again. As she returned to the cabin, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Tasha. "Izzy, I think it's time. You've built something amazing, but now it's time to make it even bigger. I have an idea. Let's talk when you get back." Izzy smiled as she read the message. Tasha had always been the one to push her, to challenge her when she needed it most. Izzy knew this message was something big. She couldn't wait to hear what Tasha had in mind. After a few days of rest, Izzy returned to the city and met with Tasha. The two sat in a cozy cafe, sipping coffee as Tasha laid out her idea. It was ambitious, global expansion, new partnerships, and even a potential collaboration with some of the world's top tech companies. Tasha had been in talks with several industry leaders who were eager to work with Izzy's program, seeing the impact it had made so far. "This is your next step," Tasha said, her voice full of excitement. "You have the platform, the vision, and now, you have the resources. This could be huge." Izzy listened intently, her mind racing. This was the challenge she had been waiting for. She had built something from nothing, and now it was time to take it to the next level. She could feel the familiar spark of determination ignite within her. She was ready. "Let's do it," Izzy said, her voice steady and confident. "Let's change the world." As they finalized the plans, Izzy felt a sense of purpose like never before. She had fought so hard to get to this point, and now, she was on the verge of something even bigger. It was a new beginning, and this time, she wasn't doing it alone. The partnerships and opportunities that were unfolding before her felt like the culmination of everything she had worked for. She had gone from a woman lost in the shadows of a broken marriage to a force to be reckoned with. Izzy was unstoppable, and she knew that nothing, not even the challenges that lay ahead, would stand in her way. Izzy stood at the top of her game, feeling the pulse of excitement in her veins. The partnership with Tasha had opened doors she never dreamed of, and now, as her vision expanded globally, she could see the impact she was making on women's lives. She had spent the last few months laying the groundwork for something massive, and every new step felt like the beginning of an empire. Yet, even with all her success, there was a quiet restlessness within her. She had never been one to rest on her laurels, and as much as she was thriving in her career, she knew she was meant for more. Izzy spent countless hours working with her team, creating programs, refining the mentorship strategy, and getting involved in every detail of the expansion. She was proud of what they had accomplished, but the pressure was immense. The bigger the company grew, the bigger the responsibility. One evening, as she reviewed documents in her office, the city lights casting long shadows on the walls, Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she was missing. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Tasha. "We need to talk," the message read. Izzy knew that tone. It was never just a casual catch-up. She quickly replied, "I'll meet you tomorrow." The next day, the two women sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the hum of the city outside blending into the background. Tasha looked at her, a mixture of excitement and concern in her eyes. "I know you're ready to take this program global, but there's a new opportunity on the table," she said, her voice steady. "A major tech company wants to partner with us. They're offering resources that could skyrocket our reach. But it comes with a catch." Izzy leaned in, her interest piqued. "What kind of catch?" They want us to shift our focus a little. They're willing to fund the expansion, but they want more control over how we run the program. They want to influence the curriculum, how we choose mints. They want the power to shape the future of what we're building. Izzy sat back, the weight of Tasha's words settling in. I don't want to compromise the vision we've worked so hard for, she said, her voice firm. Tasha nodded. I get it. But this could be the opportunity to really reach the women who need us most. This could give you the chance to make a difference on a scale you've never imagined. Izzy thought about it for a long moment, her mind racing with possibilities. She had never been afraid to take risks, but this felt different. This was no longer just about growth. It was about staying true to herself, her values, and her mission. I didn't build this to be controlled, Izzy finally said, her voice unwavering. We've done it on our own. We'll keep doing it on our own. Tasha gave her a thoughtful look. Are you sure? This could be huge. Izzy nodded slowly. We've built something special. I'm not going to let anyone take that away from us. We're not changing our vision for anyone. The decision weighed on her, but as the days passed, Izzy knew she had made the right choice. The thought of compromising her values, even for greater success, didn't sit well with her. She had fought too hard to be who she was. She had clawed her way to the top, and she wasn't about to let anyone dictate the path she was on. Instead of partnering with the tech company, Izzy doubled down on her own efforts. She secured new investors, worked with her team to find innovative ways to expand, and remained fiercely independent in her mission. It wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, long hours, and moments of doubt. But Izzy believed in the work she was doing and the change she was creating. Slowly, but surely, her company grew stronger. More women were reaching out, eager to be part of the program, to learn, to grow. Every new success story felt like a victory. And yet, there was something that still bothered her. Lucas. The thought of him lingered in her mind, though she refused to let it consume her. She had moved on, hadn't she? She had everything she needed: success, independence, and the satisfaction of knowing she was changing lives. But in the quiet moments, when she was alone with her thoughts, the memories of him would surface. The love they had once shared, the betrayal that had shattered everything, and the man who had once been her world. Izzy pushed the thoughts aside. She wasn't the same woman anymore. She was stronger. She was in control. But one night, a message arrived on her phone that she never expected. It was from Lucas. I've been thinking about you. I need to see you. Please. Izzy stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She hadn't heard from him in months. She had moved on, she reminded herself. But there was something about the message that stirred something deep inside her. She had built her life, her empire, without him. She didn't need him to complete her. But part of her wondered what it would be like to face him one more time. To see the man who had once broken her and find out if there was anything left between them. She took a deep breath, setting the phone down. No, she had already moved on. She had everything she needed, and that was more than enough. Izzy sat in her office, staring at the glowing screen of her phone, Lucas' message still there, unread. It had been weeks since he had reached out, but this was different. The words on the screen, I need to see you, stirred something in her, but she quickly pushed it away. She had worked so hard to move on, to create something of her own. She didn't need the past to hold her back. Still, there was something haunting about his message, something she couldn't shake. She picked up her phone and typed back, her fingers hovering over the keys for a moment before she wrote. No, Lucas. It's over. She hit send without looking back. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. She almost ignored it, but something inside told her she had to hear him out, once and for all. Izzy. His voice came through, tense and desperate. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I owe you that much. She didn't want to, but something inside her wanted closure. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the last remnants of the woman she used to be. Fine, she said, her voice calm but firm. 5 minutes. They agreed to meet at a small cafe, a neutral place. Izzy arrived first, taking a seat by the window, her eyes scanning the street as she tried to steady her thoughts. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't sure what to expect. A few minutes later, Lucas walked in, looking just as he always had. Powerful, composed, but with something different in his eyes now. He took a seat across from her, his expression a mix of regret and something she couldn't quite place. You look good, Izzy, he said quietly, his voice almost soft. I never imagined seeing you like this. Izzy didn't smile. What do you want, Lucas? She asked, her tone direct. He hesitated, searching for the right words. I've been thinking about what I did. I've been thinking about you. I know I hurt you. I was selfish, and I let you down in ways I can never fix. Izzy's eyes remained steady. You can't fix it, Lucas. What's done is done. I've moved on. You should too. He looked at her, his gaze lingering a moment longer than she expected. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see the woman you've become, and I regret not seeing it sooner. You're incredible, Izzy. I'm sorry for everything. Izzy felt a flicker of something. Was it pity? Was it closure? She wasn't sure. All she knew was that she didn't need his apology. She had long ago stopped seeking his validation. She had built her life on her own terms. Thank you for saying that, she replied calmly, but there was no emotion in her voice. But it doesn't change anything. I've moved on, and I'm not looking back. Not for you. Not for anyone. Lucas nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling in. I guess that's it then, he said softly. I just wanted you to know that I was sorry. I didn't deserve you, Izzy. I see that now. Izzy stood up, ready to leave. You're right, she said, her voice final. You never did. Goodbye, Lucas. She turned and walked out of the cafe, her heart light. It wasn't that she was happy to see him regret his actions. It was that she realized she didn't need him to regret them for her to be free. She had already forgiven him in her heart, long before he had the courage to admit it. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of reflection and peace. The city lights outside her apartment were brighter than they had ever been, and Izzy felt the weight of the past lift off her shoulders completely. She had built something that no one could take from her, not Lucas, not anyone. She had become the woman she was always meant to be, and for the first time, she truly understood that it had never been about the man who had walked away from her. It had always been about the woman who had stayed. She had stayed for herself, and that, she realized, was all she had ever needed. Izzy woke up to the soft glow of the morning sun filtering through the curtains of her penthouse. The city below buzzed with energy, but up here, in her sanctuary, it was quiet. The last few months had been a whirlwind, expanding her business, mentoring women across the globe, and continuing to grow the empire she had built. She had made her decision about Lucas, and while the encounter had been brief, it had given her the closure she never realized she needed. She had moved on, but something inside her told her the next chapter of her life was about to unfold in ways she couldn't yet predict. As the day went on, Izzy found herself at a crossroads again. Her team had made incredible strides with the expansion, but now they were facing challenges. The world was changing, and she needed to adapt if she wanted to keep her momentum going. She sat in her office, staring at the new proposal in front of her. The plan was ambitious, expanding the mentorship program into more countries, reaching women in even more remote corners of the world. But it wasn't just about growth. It was about impact. How could she make sure the program didn't lose its personal touch? How could she scale it without losing the heart that made it so successful? The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Tasha. Izzy, we've got a meeting with the board in a few hours. I need your input on the new proposal. Tasha's voice came through, calm and collected, but Izzy could hear the hint of urgency in her tone. I'm on it. Let's go over it together before the meeting, Izzy replied, already thinking about the challenges ahead. Later that afternoon, they met at the boardroom, where the energy was high but the atmosphere tense. The proposal was ambitious, but it was clear that the team had worked tirelessly to make it viable. The board members were eager, but there was skepticism in the air. They wanted numbers, results, proof that expanding in the way Izzy envisioned would work. Izzy stood in front of the room, her posture strong, her voice steady. This is about more than numbers. It's about creating real change in people's lives. The women we're helping aren't just looking for jobs. They're looking for empowerment, for the tools to change their futures, she began, her words resonating in the quiet room. The board members exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others still unsure. Tasha stepped forward, supporting Izzy's vision. This isn't just a business venture. It's a movement. The potential to change lives on a global scale is something we can't ignore. The discussion went on for hours, but by the end, Izzy could sense the shift. The board was on board. They agreed to the expansion, but with careful monitoring. As they wrapped up the meeting, Izzy couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had proven herself once again. She wasn't just a woman trying to make it in a man's world. She was a leader, a visionary, someone who could change the course of history. That evening, as Izzy walked out of the building, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had done it. She had taken another step forward, another challenge conquered. But there was still more to be done. The world was vast, and her reach was just beginning. As she stepped into the back seat of the car, the driver pulled away, and she looked out at the city. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely at peace. She had built something from nothing, and now it was her responsibility to ensure it kept growing, kept changing, kept empowering. The future was hers. The possibilities were endless. Izzy knew that the road ahead would never be easy, but that was what made it worth it. She was ready for whatever came next. Izzy sat at her desk, reviewing the latest round of updates for her mentorship program. The past few months had been a blur of meetings, calls, and deadlines. Her team was expanding faster than she had ever anticipated, and each new partnership brought with it new challenges. The growth was exciting, but there were moments when Izzy felt overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what she had built. Still, she couldn't stop moving forward. She had learned long ago that the key to success wasn't in waiting for the perfect moment. It was about creating your own. She looked at her calendar and saw another event coming up, an international summit for women in business. Izzy had been invited to speak, and this time, the audience would be far larger than anything she had ever faced before. As much as she had grown in confidence, there was still a part of her that wondered if she was truly ready for this next leap. But she quickly pushed that thought aside. She had been through worse and had come out on top. This would be no different. The day of the summit arrived, and Izzy found herself backstage, waiting for her turn to speak. The noise of the crowd echoed through the halls as she prepared herself for the moment. She looked around at the other speakers, successful women from all over the world, each with their own story of struggle and triumph. For a moment, Izzy felt a pang of doubt, but she quickly dismissed it. She had earned her place here. She had worked for it. The time had come for her to show the world what she was made of. When her name was called, Izzy took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The crowd's applause was deafening, but she focused on the task at hand. She smiled and greeted the audience, but inside, she was calm. She had been in countless boardrooms, giving presentations and speeches. This, however, was different. This was her story. She spoke about her journey, the challenges she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome, and the lessons she had learned along the way. She spoke about the women who had inspired her and the women she now had the privilege of inspiring. She talked about the importance of resilience, the power of community, and how she had learned to trust her own voice. As she spoke, Izzy saw the faces of the women in the audience. They were hanging on every word, and she realized something important. This wasn't just about her. It was about them. It was about creating a space where women could come together, support each other, and achieve greatness. When Izzy finished her speech, the room erupted into applause once again. This time, she didn't just hear the applause. She felt it. It wasn't for the woman she had been. It was for the woman she had become. As she left the stage, Tasha was waiting for her backstage, a proud smile on her face. "You were amazing, Izzy. I knew you had it in you," Tasha said, giving her a hug. Izzy smiled, a sense of accomplishment filling her heart. "It wasn't just me, Tasha. It's about everyone who's been a part of this journey." The rest of the summit passed in a blur of networking and new connections, but Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. She had shared her story with the world, and in doing so, she had stepped into her power in a way she never had before. The next few weeks were a whirlwind as new opportunities poured in. But despite the busy schedule, Izzy made time for herself. She started spending more time with the people who mattered most, her friends, her family, and the women who had become part of her extended network. She even started to take small trips to reconnect with herself, finding peace in the quiet moments away from the noise. One evening, as she sat by the window of her penthouse, watching the city lights flicker below, Izzy realized how far she had come. She had built something remarkable, and she had done it all on her own terms. The woman who had once been unsure of her future now stood on the edge of a bright, endless horizon. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, Izzy smiled, knowing that the best was yet to come. She had created her own path, and nothing was going to stop her now. Izzy stood in front of the window, the city lights stretching out before her like a constellation she had built herself. The weight of the world that had once been on her shoulders now seemed light, like it was nothing more than a soft breeze on a warm evening. She had fought for every inch of success, and now, it felt like she was living in a dream that she had created. The last few months had been a blur of new ventures, expansions, and partnerships, but despite the whirlwind, Izzy had never felt more at peace with herself. She had given everything to her work, and now, her work was giving back to her. As she stood there, looking out over the horizon, she realized that she had reached a turning point. She wasn't just a businesswoman anymore. She was a mentor, a role model, and a catalyst for change. And that was what she had always wanted. To create something that would outlive her, something that would inspire and empower others long after she was gone. It wasn't about the money, the accolades, or the recognition anymore. It was about the legacy she was building, the lives she was changing. The sound of her phone buzzing broke her from her thoughts. It was a message from Tasha. "Are you free tomorrow? Big news coming your way," it read. Izzy raised an eyebrow and quickly typed back, "Of course. What's going on?" Tasha's response came almost immediately. "I'll tell you in person. It's big." Izzy smiled. She had learned to trust Tasha's instincts. If Tasha said it was big, it was big. The next day, they met at their favorite cafe. Tasha was already sitting at their usual table, a smile playing on her lips. "You've got some big things ahead, Izzy," Tasha said as Izzy sat down. "What's going on?" Izzy asked, her curiosity piqued. Tasha leaned in slightly, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "I've been in talks with a major global charity organization. They've seen what you've been doing with the mentorship program, and they want to partner with you. They're offering to fund the next phase of expansion globally. We're talking about getting this program into every major city across multiple continents. They're ready to make it happen." Izzy's heart skipped a beat. She had always dreamed of taking her program to a global scale, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. It was everything she had worked for. "This could change everything," Izzy said softly, the weight of the moment sinking in. "This is what I've always wanted. To reach more women, to give them the tools they need to build their own success." Tasha nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Exactly. This is your chance to take it all the way. But it's a huge commitment. You'll need to be ready for the challenges that come with scaling up." Izzy took a deep breath, feeling the excitement and the pressure swirl within her. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now, the opportunity to make an even bigger impact was within her grasp. She had always been someone who faced challenges head-on, and this was no different. "I'm ready," Izzy said, her voice steady and confident. "This is what I've been preparing for. Let's do it." The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, contracts, and planning. The partnership with the global charity organization was finalized, and soon, Izzy found herself at the helm of an international movement. The expansion was underway, and Izzy was at the center of it all. As the program began to roll out in new cities around the world, Izzy watched with pride as women from every corner of the globe applied for the mentorship program. The impact was already being felt, and it was only the beginning. Yet, even with all the success and excitement, Izzy never lost sight of the most important thing, her mission. She wasn't in this for fame or fortune. She was in it to make a real difference, to create a ripple effect that would carry on for generations to come. And as the months went by, Izzy realized that she had done exactly that. She had built something that was greater than herself, something that would continue to inspire and empower women long after she was gone. She had become a part of something bigger than she ever could have imagined, and in doing so, she had found a fulfillment she had never known before. Izzy stood at the top of her success, not as a woman who had conquered the world, but as one who had helped others conquer it with her. And that, she knew, was the greatest achievement of all. Izzy sat in her office, the hum of the city outside a stark contrast to the calm within her. It had been months since the global expansion began, and each day brought new challenges, but also new rewards. The mentorship program had reached millions, and the impact was undeniable. Women from all corners of the world were empowered, and Izzy knew her work was far from over. She had always believed in the power of perseverance, and now she was witnessing that belief play out in real time. Yet, amidst all the growth, Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had built an empire, inspired countless women, but there was still a part of her that longed for deeper fulfillment. She had given so much of herself to her mission that sometimes it felt like she had forgotten the woman behind the work. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Izzy found herself walking through the streets of the city. The cool air felt refreshing, and as she strolled, she realized how much she had changed since she first started. She had gone from a woman unsure of her place in the world to someone who had created a lasting legacy. But now, she wondered what was next for her. She had spent so much time building and growing that she had neglected her personal life. Friends had become distant, and her connection with herself had faded into the background. Izzy paused at a street corner, looking up at the towering buildings around her. The city was alive, bustling with opportunity, but she felt an odd sense of isolation. It wasn't that she didn't have people around her, she did. It was that she had become so consumed with her work that she had forgotten the importance of balance. As she stood there, deep in thought, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Tasha. "Let's meet tomorrow. I think it's time for a new chapter." Izzy smiled, grateful for her friend's insight. Tasha always knew when it was time to step back and reassess. The next day, they met at a quiet cafe. Tasha was already sitting at the table, a knowing look on her face. "You've been working nonstop," she said, her tone soft but firm. "It's time for you to take a break, Izzy. You've built something incredible, but you need to focus on yourself too." Izzy nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. She had been so focused on building her legacy that she had forgotten about her own happiness. "I've been so caught up in everything," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "I've neglected the things that matter most, my health, my relationships, even my peace of mind." Tasha reached across the table and placed a hand on hers. "It's not about abandoning your work, Izzy. It's about finding a balance. You can't pour from an empty cup. You've given so much to others. Now it's time to give to yourself." Izzy took a deep breath, the realization settling in. She had spent so much time focused on success and growth that she had neglected the very things that brought her joy in the first place. She needed to take a step back, not to stop, but to reconnect with herself. She needed to find the balance that had always eluded her. "I think you're right," Izzy said, a sense of clarity washing over her. "It's time to focus on what really matters. I've built a legacy, but I also need to take care of myself." Over the next few weeks, Izzy took Tasha's advice to heart. She carved out time in her schedule for the things that brought her joy, spending time with family, taking walks in the park, even traveling to new places just for the sake of discovery. As she did, she found herself reconnecting with parts of herself that had long been buried. Her work had always been a part of her, but now, she realized that it wasn't the only part that defined her. She was a woman with dreams, passions, and a life to live outside of the office. The more she embraced this new balance, the more she felt a sense of peace. She still had her empire, still had her mission, but now, she was doing it with a renewed sense of purpose. As she stood on the balcony of her apartment one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues of pink and gold, Izzy smiled. She had built a legacy. She had changed lives. But now, it was time to live her own. The next chapter of her journey wasn't just about growth. It was about living fully, mind, body, and soul. Izzy knew that the road ahead would continue to be challenging, but she was ready for it. Because now, she wasn't just building an empire. She was building a life that was truly hers. Izzy sat at her desk, the soft hum of the city outside mingling with the quiet rhythm of her thoughts. The last few months had been transformative, not just for her business, but for her as a person. She had learned how to balance her ambitions with her personal well-being, and it felt like a fresh start. Her company was thriving, reaching more women than ever before, and the mentorship program had expanded into new markets, making an impact on a global scale. Yet, even with all the success, Izzy found herself reflecting on the deeper meaning of her journey. She had built something that would last, but she had also learned to nurture the parts of her life that truly mattered: her health, her relationships, her sense of peace. Her conversation with Tasha months ago about finding balance had shifted her perspective, and it was something Izzy carried with her every day. She had worked hard to create a legacy, but now, she realized that legacy wasn't just about the work. It was about how she lived, how she treated herself, and how she treated others. The more she nurtured these aspects of her life, the more fulfilled she felt. It wasn't just about checking off goals anymore. It was about enjoying the process and finding joy in the little moments. As she looked out the window, her gaze fell on the busy streets below. The world was moving fast, but Izzy had learned to slow down, to savor the moments. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to the present. It was an email from one of her new partners, offering more opportunities to expand her program even further. The message was exciting, and Izzy felt a spark of excitement run through her. She had already accomplished so much, but she realized that she wasn't done. The world was vast, and there were still so many women who needed to hear her message, so many lives left to touch. But now, as she thought about her next steps, Izzy knew that she would continue to grow her business with purpose, with care, and with a deep sense of gratitude for how far she had come. She had learned to build a life that reflected her true self, a life where she was not only successful, but at peace with who she was. As she closed her laptop and stood up to stretch, Izzy smiled to herself. She had everything she needed to keep moving forward. She had built a legacy, but now it was time to build something even more important, a life that was rich in love, joy, and balance. She was no longer just chasing success. She was embracing it, savoring it, and knowing that the journey was just as important as the destination. And with that realization, Izzy felt ready for whatever came next. She had found her purpose, her peace, and her place in the world. The best was yet to come.